We're good.
You want to bring up the opening statement? Oh, sorry.
I'll let the door open when you close it.
Ready to roll? Good evening. Today is Wednesday, December 14th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. We are in the Brecksville Broadview Heights Education Center, 6638 Mill Road, Brecksville. This is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is time for public participation during the meeting as an indicated agenda item. Prior to the regular meeting, the board will meet in executive session to consider the purchase of property for public purposes or sale or other disposition of unneeded, obsolete, unfit for use property at competitive bidding if premature disclosure of information would give an unfair competitive or bargaining advantage to a person whose personal private interest is adverse to the general public interest. Item C per board policy 0166. This meeting will be live streamed via YouTube and will also be recorded for later viewing. Please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 1C, roll call. You want to turn your mics on, everyone?
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Mack, Mrs. Wigman,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen,
Yes. Mrs. Mack is unable to be with us this evening. Item 2, resolve to enter into executive session for the consideration of the purchase of property for public purposes or sale or other disposition of unneeded, obsolete, unfit for use property at competitive bidding if premature disclosure of information would give an unfair competitive or bargaining advantage to a person whose personal private interest is adverse to the general public interest per Ohio Revised Code 121.22 item A. May I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes. We will be in executive session and hope to reconvene at 7 p.m.
We're live.
Okay. We are on item 2C. Resolve to exit executive session. May I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes. We are now out of executive session and we will reconvene with our regular meeting. We're going to open the door and let some of the audience in. Right, moving on with the agenda, we are on item 4, President's announcements. I don't really have much other than to wish everyone a very safe and joyous and blessed holiday season. Moving on to item 5, District Committee reports. Financial Liaison Audit Committee, myself and Kathleen. There are no new updates on that. Permanent Improvement Committee, Ellen and myself. I mean, we had a Permanent Improvement Committee meeting last month. So anybody interested, if you didn't catch last month's meeting, you may want to watch the the live stream posting, the recording, because we had a lengthy discussion about permanent improvements, along with a lot of figures and priorities. Board Policy Committee, Kathleen, who's not here this evening, and Tish.
We are going to have first read on 16 revisions of our board policy and one new board policy tonight. So,
Okay. Transportation Appeals Committee is myself. We've had no appeals. It's been quiet. Hopefully it stays that way. Cuyahoga Valley Career Center report. Mr. Gilbride is with us this evening.
Good evening, all.
Good evening. Is that mic on?
I think it is.
Yep.
Yeah, we're good.
We are.
Very good. Your Career Center continues to be in very good hands with Mr. Mangus and his team. Just a couple of brief updates for you. Recently, we had a ransomware attack, but I'm pleased to tell you they had it quickly sequestered. They cleared their servers. They got everything reloaded, never paid ransom, and was back up and running very, very quickly. So they seemed well prepared for that kind of stuff. I was very impressed with that. Financial report, new 5-year budget was approved last week at the meeting. We continue to be cash flow positive. Looks like the first year, which would be next year, 23, will potentially have a small deficit due to large dollars set aside for more building and facility updates. The budget has significant dollars for new roofs, new HVAC, continuing to get the glass block repaired that's been leaking for years, to the tune of about $15 million over the next 5 years. So you should be aware of that. But the facility and the budget still shows positive. So everything continues to be in good hands there.
Jim, sorry to interrupt. Do you know, were you able to leverage any ESSER funds or federal funds?
You know, I don't know the answer to that question, Mark, but I'll certainly be happy to ask it for you.
Because we made some good use of that. There was a lot of funding available that helped with ventilation, so HVAC,
Okay,
that type of stuff. So we were able
Terrific.
to leverage some of that federal funding as part of the pandemic to take care of some permanent.
I know we've gotten pandemic funds over the last couple of years, but I will specifically ask that. And if they have any questions, I would assume they could maybe reach out to you, Craig, on that. And those dollars are forecasted over the next 5 years. But we'll certainly take a look into it. Thank you. Lastly, a couple of what I think are exciting things. The manufacturing technology program for the adult education program is set to start in January. And we hope that will be a second pillar in what we are building out, a 4-pillar program to support adult ed. And then we just became aware and are going to roll out a tower and fiber tech program for adult education. And we actually got the indoor tower, the harness equipment, and the instructional material all donated. So we'll be able to get started quicker than anticipated. The state has got 3 other facilities getting started in this area. We'll be the only one in Northeast Ohio, but they didn't have any dollars. So we were going to have to wait until we were able to get these things donated. So lots of good stuff going over there. Continues to be in good hands, as I mentioned. Any questions or concerns? Not that I'm aware of. That'll be the last link to kind of get. Yeah.
What is a tower and fiber tech program?
So it's for fiber optics and for cell tower. And there's lots and lots of towers around, as we all know. And apparently there's not a lot of this kind of educational programming available currently. So there's a belief that it will pull from a good wide area. So it could be a really nice thing for the organization.
They'd like to put one up at top of the high school, we'll volunteer.
You'd like to have better signal? I'll make that note, Joel. Right, right.
If they could replace some of the roofing while they're up there.
While they're up there,
That would be great.
well, they've had lots of
Well, you're up
experience,
there
right?
anyway.
Yeah,
Do a little
well,
shingling.
and they have to do the training indoors for obvious reasons. So they have indoor towers. I don't know what that looks like, but I'll be curious to see it someday. Anyway, happy holidays to all and be well. Thank you.
Thanks, thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Mr. Gilmore.
All right, moving on, safety and security, Brittany and Tish.
The safety and security meeting or committee met on the 6th earlier this month. Conversations centered around discussions for planning future simulations looking at the spring of 23. So more to come on that front.
Very good. School foundations report. Brittany.
Also me. So as I've mentioned in previous meetings, February 16th of 23, the Schools Foundation will hold their annual fundraiser at 750 mil. They are still continuing to look for sponsors. Sponsorship information can be found on their website at bbhsf.org, and tickets will be online soon.
Very good. PSO report. Actually, I stood in for Ellen, my first PSO meeting, and I was looking because I thought I wrote a few notes down, and I think I found it. So it was great to be with at the PSO leadership meeting. Lots of great stuff going on. One of the things was they had mentioned with the Yuletide Hunger program that they had collected 3 truckloads. So it was very successful. Let's see. There were a number of people in the group had shared some very positive feedback to the board about transportation. I know we tend to hear a lot of concerns with parents frustrated because of traffic and drop off and whatnot, but we had gotten some very good feedback saying for many of our families, transportation is not an issue, traffic is not an issue, things have settled in and things are smoother. And so they wanted to make a point to convey to us that not everybody is feeling pain in our new transportation model. So that was good to hear. There was discussion about after prom being at Topgolf this year, which I thought was pretty cool. And then there was also a lot of positive comments about the culture night that was held, where there was over 30 cultures represented, food, dancing. They want to do it again, but almost might need to look at a bigger venue because so many people attended it. So
I would encourage that. It was packed.
yes, so it was all very good. I know, Joelle, did I miss anything? Anything else you want to? I was just jotting a few things down.
I was just going to talk a little bit about Shop with a Cop was the greatest fundraiser we've had thus far. We were able to take 36 kids shopping on Saturday. They took 12 kids from the middle school and the rest from the elementary school, and then went back to the elementary school to have their party where they have pizza with all the volunteers and the police officers. And so that was a huge success as well. So we really appreciate everyone who donated this year. And we had some extra kids added this year. Unfortunately, we've had some tragedy in our district where kids have lost parents suddenly. And so we were able to, because of the generosity of our staff and everyone that bought tickets, we were able to include some of those kids who may not have qualified otherwise, but because of their situations that have happened this year, we were able to include them with Shop with the Cop. And I know they were very grateful that they were able to be included. So.
Very good.
I have one quick update because
Sure.
I got a text.
Yep.
But the PSO hosted a Stuff the Sleigh donation event this past Sunday. So after the meeting, they chose to sponsor a local charity. It Takes a Village that provides clothes, shoes, and other necessities to kids in Cuyahoga County who are in foster care. And apparently 138 families attended the event. So it was a big success. That was just this past Sunday, the 11th. And then the next PSO leadership meeting won't be until February 2nd. They're not going to have one in January.
Okay. Very good. Other board member reports. Anyone else have anything else to share? Okay. We will move on to item 6, superintendent's announcements. I'll turn it over to Joelle.
Thank you. Craig, if you can just click on that first one. So as promised, we did experience a large spike in our enrollment at the elementary school. And so we wanted to be proactive and say, hey, we've done 3 enrollment studies in our district. The last one we did was back in 2017. Let's make sure that the data is what the data is. So we employed or contracted with North Coast Shared Services Alliance through the Northeast Ohio Educational Service Center. And we asked them to do an enrollment study that looked more at local trends rather than national trends. So I'm going to not read to you all these slides, but just kind of go through it if people want to understand. So first thing that we looked at was live births and our kindergarten enrollment ratio and what it has looked like over the year, and projected out as to what the number of live births are going to be through 2027. So scroll down. In this future enrollment projection, you can see our numbers for actual enrollment, and this is looking at kindergarten. One interesting fact that I want to point out, that this past year, we had 62 students in this current kindergarten class that were of age to start kindergarten last year, but because of COVID, some parents decided to not send their kids, and they don't have to until they're age 6. So we allow kids to start kindergarten, the law says, at age 5 by September 30th. The parents have the option, because compulsory school age attendance does not take place until the child turns 6. So if parents don't want to send their kids at 5, they don't have to. So of this kindergarten class, we had over 62 kids, which accounts for somewhat of the larger, but may not be the only reason we had a larger class size. So projected enrollment for kindergarten classes, you can see for 2024 through 2027, you see a slight jump in 2027. That would be contributed to people who maybe are having babies right now. So there'll be 5 in 2027. If you think about, weddings were held off and marriages were held off because of COVID. And so things got delayed over a couple of years where people weren't able to have those events. And that could contribute to why you might see a jump in 2027 due to just things being delayed over the past couple of years. So these are our enrollment trends, our ADM. So our average daily membership is what ADM stands for. And you can see we were projecting down, just as our enrollment studies that we had done in the past had suggested that we would be projecting down. You see a slight uptick here in this particular school year. And then the next graph is community school. There was an uptick in community schools this year too. Again, smaller class sizes, people, again, post-COVID, people still, being cautious about, how they're interacting with people and in what close proximity. So scroll down again. Here is our cohort trend. So I know it's hard to see if you're at home, but again, this is in board docs, so you're welcome to look at it and get a closer glimpse. But the yellow bar at the end is what our current trends are. So you definitely see what we saw this year in our elementary school, where the yellow bar is actually highest it has been in our grades K through 5. We always have a little bit of uptick in our grade 9 because we have kids who are leaving maybe private schools that go to 8th grade that will enroll into our public high school. But you can see that this year the trend is down in all those other grades. So what this tells us is, yes, we have an uptick right now in our elementary school, but overall we are not projecting, nor are they seeing when they did this study, any anticipated growth in our community, that it's still going to project the way it was projected in the first 3 studies that we had done. So this is just another look at a cohort analysis where you can see starting in 2017, 18, if you follow the yellow bar, so that was our 3rd grade class, you can see it grew by 7 kids in 1 year, and then it grew by another 8 kids the following year, but went back down. So it's this kind of moving target, went back down. And so those kids in 3rd grade that started in 3rd grade in 2017 are now in our 8th grade class, and you can kind of see their trajectory. So that's kind of what we see with our classes when we follow the enrollment. Some grades will go up, some grades will fluctuate. People move in and out all the time from our district. So pretty consistent with what our enrollment study is, former enrollment studies have shown. Next slide. We also had them look at new construction starts in our 3 communities. And so these, you can see where the construction start, there was a big boom. I think that's in 2018. And then we have slowly decreased obviously in 2019. And you have about 33 new building permits that were issued in 2021. Keep going down. Oh, I'm sorry, that was the last page.
Yeah.
So the last thing. So the recommendations and conclusions that scroll down.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. No, we'll return to pre-pandemic trends. The reason is likely short-lived trend through the district should continue to monitor future kindergarten enrollment through future variances. And so we're tracking it. We're still looking at enrollment. We will look at what our kindergarten enrollment is this year. We typically start registering for kindergarten late February, early March. So we'll have a better indication if this is a trend that we're going to see again for next year, or if this is something that, again, is this bubble that we saw possibly because we opened up the new building, people were excited and wanted to come, that we will see our enrollment numbers go back to what we anticipated they would be from the first 3 enrollment studies. But we wanted to put it out there. It's for anyone to analyze, ask questions. I'm happy to answer any questions. If any community members have any questions about it, they can email me directly. Oh, and then my only other 2 other announcements. One, just pretty cool thing. There is a production group that is following around our gymnastics team this season on their road to possibly 20 in a row state titles. And they're planning on doing a documentary, win or lose, they're following them around. So it's all in real time and live from what they're filming on the documentary. And so a little added pressure, I think, for our gymnastics team, but pretty cool that, once it is done, the documentary, whether they win or lose, is scheduled to air this summer once they get it all edited. So pretty exciting to see. Our gymnastics team on a national level is going to be pretty cool to see. And then I just echo Mr. Dosen and wish all of our families and our community just happy holidays. And as we said at the PSO meeting, we have experienced a lot of tragedy this year, an unexpected tragedy with many of our kids and they're losing parents and people being sick this year. And so, as I said at the PSO meeting this season, just hug your kids a little harder this year. We try to get through this together as a family, but it's been a rough couple of months for sure.
Any questions on the enrollment study from the board or comments?
I don't have a question about the enrollment study, but since it's Joelle's platform, can I ask a question? So I didn't know if you wanted to make mention or just mention how the internet forum or the forum on internet crimes went. I don't know how many of I was watching it live stream because I could not attend on site. And I know that there was about close to 200 people at times on the live stream. I don't know how many were in the audience, but I thought, as a board member, it was very, very important information. I didn't know if you kind of wanted to, if that is still available for viewing or.
I think it is because
Okay.
Our high school principal had stated today that I think they went on and looked at numbers and there's been about 500 views of that video. But I was disappointed at the turnout in terms of, having it live and in person. I think there was we had about 75 people, I would say, in the audience that were there live. We had a great panel of speakers. We had a judge from juvenile court who was able to come, Judge Jennifer O'Malley, and gave her perspective of what she's seeing in court. And she used to be a prosecutor. And so she could talk from her experience as to what she is seeing in the courtroom. In addition, someone from ICAC, which is Internet Crimes Against Children, gave some, pretty raw statistics on what it is that, people are doing and posing as other children to get people. The sextortion thing that we talked about, I was surprised that many of our adults did not know what that was. And again, if you may not know, but I was surprised even some of our police officers, that was like the first time that they had heard what was happening. And so it's pretty scary what is happening with our kids. I think the thing that concerned me the most is I had met with a group of kids earlier in that day, and we were talking about, the sexting and the sextortion that we are seeing in our schools, and it's happening in our schools. And when I've got high school kids and middle school kids looking at me saying, well, Ms. Magyar, this is just how we communicate these days, scared the life out of me that there's this feeling that is a normal behavior for middle school and high school kids to send nude photos of themselves to each other. And so very disheartening. And so the message that we wanted to make sure that parents understood is this is not normal. You need to be checking your child's phone because at any given time, you're sending pictures. It is a violation of law, and you could be labeled as, somebody who's passing child pornography, and we do not want that for our kids. So if you have not seen the video that the live stream that we put together, I would encourage all parents to take the time to kind of to look at that. It's it is happening in our schools. I heard it firsthand, and unfortunately we've seen it. And that's probably the most embarrassing thing as adults in our school district, is that when it comes to our attention, we have to investigate and we see it. And that is not something any of us would like to see. So, but thank you for bringing it up. I slipped my mind to mention it, but thank you.
I'd like to echo how well that was presented. I too attended remotely. It was nice to see a large attendance even remotely. So making that available to our community members digitally is fantastic. And just thank you for conducting the enrollment study. I know that there's been a lot of questions regarding the capacity of the elementary school. And so I appreciate you taking the time and the diligence to look into this further.
Yeah, with the enrollment study, and if people go to this agenda item, you can also find the prior 3 enrollment studies from 17, 15, and 13. And I just want to I've mentioned this before, but I want to reiterate it, that, you know, the whole effort with the bond campaign and the capital improvement effort to offline 4 old buildings and replace it with 1 building was to right size our capacity. And while the new elementary school is pretty full, there is capacity on the other end, like in the high school, it's less full. So from a district standpoint, we have plenty of capacity across all of our buildings. Some buildings are a little tighter than other buildings, but these types of enrollment studies and a look out into the future to see what's coming will help us plan, so that if we start seeing numbers come in that are in line with this, then we have a good confidence that we're at a good place with the way we have our grades distributed across our buildings. If we start to see something come in that's different than this, and we'll try to look at it and understand it. And if there is a need somewhere down the road to shift grades from one building to another, that's always an option. But the important thing is that we have right-sized the capacity in our district. So we're not sitting on way too much capacity, and we're not in a place where we can't handle a couple hundred more students popping in on any given year. Okay, we're going to move on to item 7, treasurer's announcements. I'll turn it over to Craig.
I have lots of announcements. One just quick reminder as well is that if you did not read the email that went out last week, we did make the availability for Pay School so that parents can transfer lunch balances. Very, very excited about that. We kept asking for it, complaining about it. Other schools have too, and so they did make that feature available. They're turning it on by district, and so we had ours turned on last week and noticed that out to the community so that they could start making those transfers on their own. So just wanted to make that announcement as well. Little permanent improvement updates that we have. So we've been kind of tag teaming some of these efforts. So the first is the high school parking lot. It is basically completed and ready for use. It's been striped. It's ready to go for the most part. I think Kevin is going to come up with his plan to get the.
We're waiting for the light.
Oh, just the lights still has to come in.
Lights,
Sorry.
yes.
So it got fully striped, I think, a couple days ago. So it looks good. The middle school auditorium, as we talked about last month, we had a meeting, basically met with Mr. Rings and some committee members a few weeks ago to discuss the overall plan. We're beginning the stages of how we're going to execute that. It's going to take anywhere from 6 to 8 months to complete that project with Martin Public Seating and other vendors and stuff. One of their so far, their carpeting vendor has fallen through. So they're trying to get a hold of the carpeting vendor or to find a replacement carpeting vendor, so that we're trying to put all those ducks in a row. So that is kind of up and running. And then we do have a lot of technology updates. So we have security cameras at the middle school. So that is going to be, I guess, supposed to be at the middle school. It's not as the middle school. We're using our OFCC safety and security grant to upgrade the security cameras at the middle school. So we're starting that project currently. We did not have enough money to kind of ties into the security grant update below. We did not have enough money to do both buildings at this time. We're going to see if there's any money left from the grant, and then see if we could possibly supplant money in the PI fund to finish both so that everything is done. So we're going to look at that once we get the final numbers for the middle school that includes installation. We are also working on getting the interactive flat panels, quotes and installation together at the middle school. So there's a good seamless transition for our elementary kids that'll start moving up to the middle school next year. That was one of the projects that was kind of delayed as we worked on other items. And then we're also going to be on our E-rate application. We're going to scope it. Our current scope is that we have 1 gigabit per second. We're going to scope that E-rate project for 1 and 2 gigabits and see what the cost differences are, whatever as it relates to bandwidth, and perhaps increase our bandwidth capabilities by getting the 2 gigabits per second fiber line into the district. We haven't had complaints, but they're going to be, our tech department is going to be monitoring bandwidth just to see where we kind of are as a whole moving forward. So we unfortunately did not get the safety grant, the second part of it, again, which was an additional $100,000. And again, we'll update this as we go forward if we can do the other part of the camera project, depending on what's left. Was also asked to talk more about the athletic capital campaign that we may look at starting. I think that with the tennis courts completed and the track resurfaced, we're looking at the possibilities of there's other things that maybe wants. And so this may be a good avenue to look at. So I reached out to kind of the state level to see what people have been doing, but these two are local. So I wanted to include some of what their treasurers had shared with me. So Bay Village, they established an 070 fund, which is a form of a permanent improvement fund, capital fund. And they took large donations from their boosters that would go straight into the fund. And at times they would have to transfer from the general because they did it as a pledged donation. So people could pledge like $5,000 over 5 years. And so they could get projects off the ground. The general fund would basically front the money and then they would be able to pay it back or move it into a different fund. And then at North Royalton, they've had a fund that was a separate group of people called the North Royalton Stadium Foundation, which was established in 2010. At that time, they were trying to basically renovate and build a stadium. The group is a separate 501c3, and they are totally separate from the athletic and the band boosters. And their sole mission was to help fund projects for the stadium. In 2010, they were able to raise $1.3 million for their turf and track. And since then, they have done numerous projects to help, including half of a donation of a scoreboard replacement and other projects. They are currently in the process. The way they've been doing it for them is that they do a huge golf outing every year. They raise about $20,000. Currently, they're in the process of donating $370,000 now and then $90,000 later to replace their turf. They also are in charge of all the advertisements at the stadium, both local and not local. And so they have like a continuous revenue flow into that fund. So they run theirs out of an 019 fund. So it's a little bit different. So, I mean, there's different ways to do it. So that was some of the local feedback that we've had. And so I don't know, we'll probably have discussions maybe about if we would be interested in, depending what the needs are at the athletic facilities, I think of some of the comments or wants that have been needed that I don't think that where we are now with other projects on PI that we should be diverting funds towards, since we now have all of our other facilities at least operational and in good shape.
Craig, would something like the athletic capital campaign, could the adjective of athletic be removed to include other facilities within a district, say our auditoriums?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can.
I know our middle
a
school.
capital campaign improvement fund. I mean, you could, or a committee that
Yeah.
does that, be a part of it. So yeah.
I know our middle school leadership and PSO leadership has worked exceedingly hard towards their efforts in improving the middle school auditorium. I know the high school is probably in need of some improvements as well. And so thinking about other facilities that could benefit from a concerted effort outside of the athletics. Not that I'm not a proponent of improving our athletic complexes, but also there are other facilities,
right,
and some of our non-athletic individuals who could benefit from a concerted effort like this.
Yeah, great. And North Royalton actually mentioned too that this group that they formed also does work in conjunction with their like schools foundation that they have, as well as their band boosters and their PS. Like they work together to put on some of these events, and then they'll even split some of the revenues to kind of fill the coffers in different places. So they actually do a lot of teamwork. The only thing that you'd have to just be careful of is that sometimes if you put too many interests together, you could have competing interests of who gets what. Sure.
Oh, sure.
Right. So you'd have to either have equal representation, or which could end in a stalemate, or you could have the separate groups as they are, and they could work together in a more collaborative way. So technically you could call it or create it however you'd like, but yes.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Have we had any conversations or outreach to our athletic boosters club?
So not yet. This is just more of like a preliminary idea of like some of the stuff that we've heard of, like I said, those wants or things to upgrade different things in the district. So it's like, maybe we should look at starting something like this so it could be focused or whatever, and see what we can come up with. Sometimes we get hypotheticals of people.
Right. I mean, I know one of the challenges might be for like a booster club, you know, if they donated $20,000 and put a new scoreboard up, you could look and say, we did that scoreboard, we did that one thing, versus if it went into a big pot that just got trickled out to like, well, we put a little bit over here and a little bit over there and a little bit over there. You know, there might not feel as much of a sense of contribution, because you can't look and say, you know, the boosters did this or did that. Because I know they would do
Right.
projects each year or donate, like, hey, make a donation to, you know, replacing the turf or doing the bleachers or, you know, redoing the locker rooms or what have you. So I guess some of that, I guess we might need to have some outreach to them and see what their thoughts are. And
Yeah.
also figure out how to structure it in a way so that, you know, it works for everybody if we go forward with this.
Yeah, for sure. I think like, and this group is specifically to the stadium, because I asked that question, I'm like, what did you do with like other athletic facilities? And so that's where like more of the athletic boosters came in, because I think they wanted this to be very specific to, this is what we're working for, this is what we're donating, this is what we're focused on. So yeah, no, that's the conversation that we'll probably be having with Mark, just to see if we can get something started. So, but it was good to hear what other people are kind of doing. So, and there were other people in the state that were asking, hey, let me know what you guys end up doing. So we'll be sure to share out once we figure out what that is.
I have a couple questions. Did any of the schools that you talked to like give you any information about how they started initially funding?
They've all done it with like fundraisers, or we're soliciting like big donors,
Okay.
is how they were doing it.
And is there an issue, because I know this came up at some point during I think there was somebody here last month or maybe the month before about the baseball field in Title IX. Is there any issues like if you set up this type of fund, how does that, do the distributions that come out of that fund need to comply with Title IX?
So it's a good point. So in North Royalton, for instance, they have district administration, so that sit on the committee. And so that would definitely have to be something that was considered, because we wouldn't be able to do that otherwise. So what you do for one, you'd have to do for the other.
Okay. So,
but there would be district representation. There would have to be, so that they would know what those things are, that before any decisions were made, because ultimately they're still making a donation and the school is running the project. And so we would not be able to do the project if we weren't in compliance with Title IX.
okay.
For instance, if they only wanted to fund one. Right, correct.
And then what do you think the pros and cons are of the two examples that you just described?
I mean, I think they're both very similar. I would probably do an 070 fund. I mean, you really could do an 003 fund. The recommendation from, which is a PI fund, but the PI fund sometimes can be under more scrutiny because it really has a very specific purpose, and everything would have to last longer than 5 years, which in this case, most of that stuff would need to last more than 5 years. But that is why there's a little bit more flexibility in an 019 fund. I'm not sure if 070 actually follows the same exact rules, but I'd be more inclined to use an 003 or an 070 fund. But in general, I think they're doing very, very similar things. I just don't know if she didn't say the Bay Village one, whether it was a 501c3, which I mean, I could follow up with, but they basically are using an athletic boosters to make large donations and collect money.
And then last question, who is in charge of both of these funds? Is it all, I mean, anybody from the school administration, or is it just community members?
So there's at North Royalton, I think it's the superintendent from the school side, you mean?
Mhm. Well, just generally, I mean, who operates the fund?
The operates the fund is the district. So
Okay.
the treasurer usually monitors the money part and what's being donated and recognized at the board level and then spent. for the projects, but then like
Okay.
treasurer, business manager, superintendent, those people are involved in the administration of the projects and the meetings parts, but I guess.
Does the board need to approve the spending of these funds?
No, it would
Okay.
be, the donations would be coming in, so
Yeah.
they would go into the fund. So the board would not need to approve those. There would be potential bidding, which you'd have to approve.
Okay.
Because the bids would have, if they were over $50,000, you'd have to do the bidding part of it, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Not like a separate resolution other than the bidding side.
Well, can I say one thing about the parking lot?
Sure.
It's awesome. So, I mean, talking about gymnastics, we had a huge gymnastics event this week. I have a gymnast. So, and it's getting a ton of use already. So I actually think the location's fantastic for accessing the high school and middle school. It's great. So.
Good. It'll be better when light is there.
Yeah.
Good. Moving on to item 8, community communications, hearing of the public. Before I read through it all, is there anybody here who wishes to be heard? Or do we have any?
I do not have any.
Okay. And I will dispense with the reading of that, and we will move on to item 9, other board business. Item A, resolve to approve the resolution authorizing the administration to grant an easement to the city of Brexville as attached. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Joel, you want to just give a little explanation of what we're doing with this?
Yeah, so as you recall, when we built the elementary school, we passed a variance not to put the sidewalks in front of the area of Oaks Road that is our property. And so the city is making a connection through their Blossom Hill property down to Oaks Road. And then it will continue down sidewalks that they are currently going to be building down Glenwood. And so that piece of property that comes in front of our elementary school, they need essentially permission to put the sidewalk there. So this resolution is giving the city permission to put that piece of sidewalk in on our property.
Okay, and even just a little more backstory. So our new elementary school, we had an arrangement with the Metro Parks to put a drive from our new elementary school onto Valley Parkway. I was going to say Valley View and it didn't sound right. Valley Parkway. And that is dedicated for bus traffic only. So no car traffic can come with that. As part of that arrangement, the Metro Parks was looking for some way to connect Valley Parkway to Oaks Road through the Blossom campus. And the school district was not comfortable with a all-purpose trail, if you will, on right next to the school because of obviously you have children out at recess and whatnot. You don't want strangers just walking by. So the city of Brexville had agreed to put it somewhere else on the Blossom campus. So now that's going to be tied in, there needs to be a connection. So that's what this is for, a sidewalk connection back to the school and Glenwood Trail. So that's a little bit more of the backstory about what's going to happen. I don't know where the city's at with their plans to put that in, but
So they are starting their preliminary plans in January. We got an email on it actually yesterday. And so we're starting to communicate to our families that they're going to be closing down Glenwood in both directions starting in January. So we're communicating that out this week to our elementary families, just so people know. But that work is starting here very soon after the new year.
okay. Any other comments or questions before we vote? All right, roll call.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes. Item C is election of president pro tem for our organizational meeting. I guess we need to find somebody before we can do the resolution. So do we have anyone? Ellen, would you like to be pro tem?
I'm a little superstitious about what happened last year.
Okay.
So maybe
Okay.
I
Anything
nominate Brittany.
Oh.
Good discussion.
Do you second that, Tish? No, I'm just kidding. It's really not a second.
I was going to say,
Anybody?
I decline respectfully.
We'll give it a go.
All right. Very
Okay,
good.
great.
Okay, so
Greg, I'm gonna
item
need to talk to you
C,
about this.
It's very easy.
we'll walk you through it.
Okay, basically open the meeting and then you elect somebody.
Yes.
Perfect.
And you
Yes.
turn it over.
Yes,
Love
it's
it.
a very short process. I served in that capacity successfully a number of years.
Most recently, when you passed the gavel from the left hand to the right hand, as I recall.
Yes, I think so, right. Okay, so item C, resolve to appoint Brittany Wigman as president pro tem for the January 4th, 2023 organizational meeting. May I have a motion?
So moved. Oh, second,
Roll call.
Mrs. Kramer,
yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Wakeman.
Do I vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes. All right, congratulations, you're on your way.
Up and coming. There we go.
All right, we're going to move on to item E.
I was like, I don't think she put.
I don't think it's an action, right? Because we're not voting on this.
Oh, that's first
This
reading.
is a new revised board policy, first reading. I think this is just informational or what?
Yeah, does anyone have any questions on any of the policies that are up for first read?
Am I, just one question, I'm sorry. Was it the diploma deferral that was the new one? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. All right. Item F is the Hilton discussion. So just as a recap from our last meeting, we talked about what do we want to do with Hilton. The board was united in the belief that we should retain the property because that's part of our broader campus here. So we knew we wanted to keep the property. So the next question became, what do we do with the building? The original, I don't know if I'll call it a plan, but the original intent when we went out with the bond issue was to offline the old buildings and demolish them. And so the bond issue included proceeds that would allow us to fund removal of the buildings. For Chippewa, we didn't have to take the building down because that should close in the coming days, next week maybe, and it will be sold with the building on it, so we didn't have to deal with that. Highland is still in process of being marketed to be sold with the building on it, so we don't have to worry about Highland. And that left Hilton. And since Hilton is on property that we want to keep, we had to decide what do we want to do with the building. It's still a very old building that was designed 60 years ago to be an elementary building. And so at the time at our last meeting, there were not any great ideas about what could you do if you wanted to try to salvage the building. And so we talked about for Craig and Joel to see if you can find any proposal that would make sense to retain those buildings. And did you come up with anything?
So, I mean, and when I say this, I want to be very clear, this has nothing to do with the current elementary school. But if we look at trends in our community and our neighboring communities, everybody is searching for preschool space. We've got preschool kids, coming out of the woodwork that are our responsibility. And Independence is feeling the same thing. North Royalton is feeling the same thing. So the only thing that we even discussed remotely was, if the district wanted to spend the money to renovate that building and make it a preschool center, not necessarily for our preschool kids, but to create a preschool that other cities could, rent the space and use that space, that it could at some point, once the cost of renovating the building, it could be a revenue stream for our district simply because of the sheer number of kids that everyone is searching for preschool. But again, that's a cost to the district to be able to renovate that building and to be able to create a center like that would be open to multiple communities to create that preschool center. But that was really at this particular juncture, the only thing that we, creatively thought that if that was something we wanted to keep it, to explore for a little bit longer, would be a need that is definitely needed around this area.
So of course, the challenge there is you still have a very old building that we have done the minimal amount of maintenance on because we knew we were offlining it. So, roofs, windows, boilers, everything. So, the challenge with retaining the building and then fixing it up is now you have to have money to fix it up. You have to decide, are you fixing the entire thing up? Are you demolishing part of it, retaining some of it? All of it has a cost. And then even with all of that, do you have enough tenants that would want to lease it? And if it did turn into a larger preschool campus, I shudder to think what our traffic will be on Mill Road if we put another large educational facility online right as part of our broader campus.
Yeah, I mean, for
So-
context, I mean, I think you're looking at that scenario as several $1 million to renovate that space, and that's what makes it so difficult. And like, is there a need for it? And yes, it's also it would be a strategic business that you'd have to do. So, but does it make sense with spending millions of dollars to fix the things that are wrong with it and retrofit certain spaces financially? I mean, probably not.
Plus, we would be on the hook of, if you're gonna rent it out or lease it out, we're gonna be on the hook for all the infrastructure, right? So a boiler goes, roof leaks, whatever. So, so that what's in front of us is, short of wanting to explore that further, the other obvious option would be to just demo the building, which was the original thinking when we went out for the bond issue. And then maybe just turn that area, then that's just part of our campus. So maybe we just plant grass there and it becomes available for athletic teams to use, or if somebody else has another idea down the road, we have room to do something if we need to.
What are the monthly maintenance costs right now over there? And then, and I know I should know this, I'm bad at remembering numbers. What's the estimated cost to demo it? And like, what sort of a timeline do you need for something like that? I assume it takes a long time.
So the monthly maintenance costs are not horrible in that building so far. Like the water bill, I mean, the water's basically not, it's not being used, right? But it's not being turned off because it has to heat the building. We haven't been super cold yet, so we don't know what the heating cost necessarily is. We use leveled gas billing here anyway, so it's almost like being on the budget. So we're continuing, we're actually developing some spreadsheets to kind of track some of that data in all of our buildings. The other thing we've run into, which I think maybe we've stopped that, are children that were walking on the roof because they were able to get access to the roof because nobody hasn't been in the building. So that was something we had to address, I mean, a couple months ago, but it was like, there's someone on the roof. That's not good. So I'm like, how do you get up there? But apparently you can step on an electrical box and get up there and very easily for any kid almost. So
Very funny thing to see when you're sitting at your desk and you look out, you see kids running on the
there's
roof.
like a kid running on the roof.
Maybe we shouldn't explain how you can get on the roof.
Well, it's being monitored now.
Okay. So you used to be able to get on really easily, but you can't get on easily right now.
You cannot anymore.
There
It's
are
true.
cameras, kids. There are cameras.
There are cameras and people watching.
We'll know who you are.
It's right outside my window.
Yeah,
so
she
all I
can-
gotta do is look
she
out
can
and
see
that's
directly.
you, Late as day, so.
Yeah, that's the problem. They don't know you could be seen so easily.
Right.
Demolition. We believe the buildings were originally spec'd to be demoed at $300,000. I've also heard now that it's probably $600,000. So I'm hoping it's less than that, but I mean, we're trying to plan for the fact that it would be around $600,000 to $700,000 to demo it. I have no idea how long it would take to demo that. I don't know if you guys ever had any conversations prior to my arrival about what the timeline would be, but I would say several months.
Yeah, I don't,
Probably to-
would we have to go out? I would think we would go out for bid on
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
And it would be something you'd probably want to do over the summer.
Yeah, and I think if you're making that, but I mean, the bidding process would need to happen in the next couple of months if you wanted to do it this summer. For instance.
Was there a reason why we wouldn't want to do it as soon as we could? Like why, I guess
mean,
there's
no,
nobody in the
that's-
building, so I guess why would it need to be done over the summer?
Oh, I just
Well, I
meant
mean,
because
It might just be easier for work conditions, I guess, over the summer. Sometimes they don't.
Well,
work when it's too cold.
given the fact that we're maintaining the building, the quicker we can bring it down
Right,
would
right.
be to our advantage. So if there's a reason to wait till summer, that's fine. But if there's not, and we look at saying how long put it out to bid, how long can they, when do they, I mean, I would think they could do that any time of day in terms of weather.
I would think that they would not, I'm thinking from the bid perspective, like we probably wouldn't be able to make a decision not a decision, like a contract and award a bid probably till February or March. And so they would probably be able to start hopefully soon after that. So in my mind, I guess that is almost
Yeah.
summer
I
for
mean,
us. But like April, May is when they probably will start.
we do need some time. We've moved everything from Chippewa and, Highland over to Hilton. So it's actually, we're using it
storage.
as a storage area right now. And Josh is using it as a storage area for some of the chemicals and products that we need over the winter. So the custodians go there, they pick it up and they take it back to their building. So we would need a little time to relocate some of those things. And then to finish, we had talked about doing a second auction. So we did our auction to meet the requirements when we closed the building, and we talked about auctioning it off. You may remember me talking about, I also reached out to some schools down in Florida because of the destruction from the hurricane of some of the schools, to offer to donate some of our desks and chairs down to those schools there. I don't think they were interested. I sent them a bunch of pictures and I haven't heard back. So we have many chairs and desks and tables that we would put up for auction, and then we would have to dispose of. That's going to take some time too. So while we could issue a bid, I don't foresee that work getting done with everyone else's schedule in the winter and having our maintenance guys available to empty that building in time, probably until summertime.
Or late spring. I mean, like
Yeah,
late
a more,
spring.
that
Yeah,
would be a
no,
more
I mean,
realistic time.
yeah, I mean, it's fine. I mean, we don't have to rush it, but whatever the timeline is. So we're using the building for some storage. We got to get rid of some old furniture, that's all. We just bake that all into the equation.
Yeah, I
So
think
I
if we
guess-
explore that, then we would get a timeline, I think, from the demolition side, and then we back into what we have to
Right.
get out of the building.
Right. Is the board okay with moving forward with the plan to demo that building?
Generally I am, but for me, I guess what I'm concerned about when you talk about preschool, we have the capacity at the elementary to, if our preschool goes bonkers, to meet the need, because let's be honest, the state has changed preschool requirements year after year after year, and districts are being asked to take on more and more and more in their preschool enrollment and to hire staff for the preschool enrollment and things like that. So if push comes to shove, are we going to be able to, manage that at the elementary?
So I think it goes back to the conversation on capacity that Mark was speaking of earlier. Do we have the capacity district-wide to have increase in preschool? Yes. In our current elementary building, the way we designed it with the 4 preschool rooms, and then having to add 2 more classes, we've moved some people around to be able to do that. And moving the preschool out of the elementary school to give us space in other grades doesn't do us any good, meaning that the preschool rooms, we can't stick 5th graders in there.
Right.
So to move the preschool out and put that is not going to help with the space or the capacity issue we have at the elementary school. But, we brought up that to say, we'd keep our preschool there if it was more of something that we looked at as a community-based preschool and to offer a different type of preschool. So right now we just have our special ed preschool with typical peers, but do we look at running an ECE preschool where it's, so those were kind of the things that we had the conversation about. But we have the ability to, if our preschool continues to grow, to keep them at the elementary school, but it might cause some of those things that Mark was talking about of having to move other people around the district, which we're not at the point to do that right now at all. So.
Yeah, no, it's fine. And I meant to bring up also, I mean, at our last meeting, when we talked about permanent improvement, we talked about one of the high priority items was to put an access road through Hilton onto our main campus, right? Which would be another thing if you tried to redeploy that building somewhere else and down the road, we decided to put that access road in, that could also cause, which is another consideration and probably another reason why taking the building down, I think makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So is the rest of the board, is everybody comfortable with Joelle and Craig pursuing bids for taking the building, emptying the building and demoing the building?
Yes. I am open to exploring the pricing and process for demoing the building, but I'm a little nervous. Yeah.
Nervous about the potential cost?
The potential implications of capacity and what opportunities we might be foregoing if we eliminate the building off the campus. I think I'll have more to say maybe once we have a better idea of what the timeline looks like.
Okay. So you guys can go forward and see what that looks like. What's it going to take to empty the building and then go out to bid to have the building removed, and then I assume just put grass there for the interim, and then we'll figure out later if we want to do something else.
Sounds good.
Okay, item 10, so there's no superintendent's other business?
No,
Or
that's
there-
my Christmas gift to you guys this year.
Oh, okay, very good. We'll take it. All right, item 11, superintendent's consent agenda. Item A, resolve to approve certified personnel recommendations. Item B, resolve to approve classified personnel recommendations. Item C, resolve to approve supplemental personnel recommendations. And item D, resolve to approve superintendent's consent items A through C. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on any of the recommendations?
Good luck to Mr. Brennan.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's very exciting.
Mhm.
That was bittersweet.
Absolutely.
Any comments or questions before we vote? Roll call.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes. Item 12, treasurer's consent agreement. Item A, resolve to approve the financial reports as attached. Item B, resolve to authorize the treasurer CFO of the Brexville-Broadview Heights City School District to request the county auditor to advance taxes from proceeds of the tax levies pursuant to section 321.340 of the Ohio Revised Code to meet current expenses as needed during the period of January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023. Item C, resolve to accept donations as presented. Item D, resolve to approve the meeting minutes from the November 16th, 2022 regular board meeting as attached. Item F, resolve to approve treasurer's consent items A through D. May I have a motion?
So moved.
All right, Craig, you want to walk us through this?
Okay, all right, we'll do the monthly report first. Let's see. So here's our monthly cash flow. I did update, I kind of highlighted here a little bit. Let me zoom that just a little bit more. Highlighted for the month here of our total revenues that we received, which is $493,894. So these are all of our actual numbers as 5 months into the fiscal year. And then we have all of our expenditures here as $4.2 million for a negative 3.7 for the month. So I did update the right-hand side of this. So we have projections the rest of the way. And then we look in this column to see what our projected is versus our forecast. So I updated the November forecast numbers here in blue, followed by the, I guess, pink, orange, salmon color, whatever that is, for the actual projections right now. So we'll see if that, some of those will fluctuate as we go, as we get actual numbers, those will change a little bit here and there. But right now, everything basically looks very good. Under the forecast, based on the actual end of November, we'd be $17,000 less than what was projected at this time. And it's probably going to change again because we have to hire a preschool teacher. So that happened since the forecast was originally done last month. So, all right, let's look at our revenues comparing November of 22 to November of 23. We see that basically the only difference here is the state revenue is higher this year than what it was last year. Again, if you remember, that's going to catch up. I think it's in January when we got that large payment last year. So that's when you look at the totals right now, we're almost spot on with the exception of state revenue at this time. On the expenditure side, again, our expenditures are elevated a little bit, but that's normal. The total expenditures fiscal year to date are 3.1% higher than last year. The district correlation is to a direct, correlation to salaries and benefits. And there's some supplies and purchase services are 3%. I think overall that's still not bad though, considering what inflationary pressures we're facing as a nation. I guess a good thing that things are coming down and we're now into the low sevens. But to be 3% up is not necessarily horrible. So this is what we look like for the forecasted revenues versus the projected revenues. So it's unfavorable here, but it's also favorable here on the expense side. And so that difference is here. It still shows our cash balance is very close to the forecast for right now. And then overall for the year, we compare our total revenue from July to June, or I'm sorry, July to, what am I thinking? The month, November. I can't think. For 22 versus 23. So we see an increase in revenue, and then we do see our expenditures the same period from July through November, slightly elevated from a year standpoint. So overall, things are looking good. This resolution is basically to allow me the opportunity to request tax advances without pulling money out of investments, which we're making some good money on our returns again, that's the good thing. But to not pull money out of investments, the district starts to run out of money in the general checking account right about now through January. So this allows me to request the money from our real estate revenue as soon as it comes in. So they will issue us, rather than give us our first payment in February or March, they'll give us our first payment in January. So that's what this does. It'll also do that same thing on the back end to give us our first payment in July versus August or September. So that's what that does. We do that every year. We have a lot of donations, so lots to recognize. There is a nice large one here though from the Kiwanis Foundation of Brecksville for $5,000. And that is a cash donation for the English language learner students. As you know, we have a lot of Ukrainian refugees in the district, so they are trying to help with that. So Mr. Martin is planning those purchases already, as well as the Brecksville United Methodist Church, also for English language learning students for $760. So we appreciate those. And that's it, other than the minutes.
Great. Any questions or comments? Roll call.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Mack. Oh, sorry, Mrs. Wigman. I didn't say that the whole meeting. Mrs. Wigman.
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes.
Like I was expecting her to answer.
All right. Item 13 is executive session. Resolved to enter into executive session to consider matters required to be kept confidential by federal law or regulations or state statutes per Ohio Revised Code 121.22, item G5. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes. So this will be our last action. After we come out, we'll just adjourn the meeting. So thank you all for dialing in and attending. And again, have a great holiday season.
Yes, we're good.
We're good. Yep. Item 13C, resolve to exit executive session. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman,
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes. Item 14, closing items. Item A is announcements. The organizational meeting of the Board of Education is scheduled for Wednesday, January 4th, 2023 at 5 p.m. at the Education Center. Item B, resolve to adjourn the meeting. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Mrs. Kwiatkowski.
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman.
Yes.
Mr. Dosen.
Yes, that meeting is adjourned. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you.